There's something new in the Microsoft 365 Copilot world that's significantly changing how you interact with Copilot. It's called Copilot Cowork. In this video, we'll take a look at how it works behind the scenes, what are some good use cases for this, and how it compares to regular old Copilot. So let's get started. Now first, let's unpack the origin story of Copilot Cowork. So you might be familiar with a company called Anthropic, the makers of Claude. Well, earlier this year, they came out with Claude Cowork. Now the concept with Claude Cowork was instead of chatting back and forth with an AI tool, you give it a task and kind of go off, do something else, let it do its thing, and come back to a finished output. And with Claude Cowork specifically, it could run locally on your machine, meaning it could access all the files on your machine or whatever you give it access to. And it could execute tasks on your behalf. So Microsoft kind of saw this and said, let's do something like that, but for enterprise, enter Copilot Cowork. So they actually worked with Anthropic to take that underlying technology and integrate it within Microsoft 365 Copilot. Now, other than the fact that this runs inside of Microsoft 365 Copilot, a big key difference between Copilot Cowork and Claude Cowork is Copilot Cowork runs 100% in the cloud, not on your machine. So other than needing to be on your machine to kick off Copilot Cowork, your machine doesn't even have to be on for it to go run and do its task. You could literally open it up, send in your prompt, and let it go to work, shut down your computer, and come back on later and see the result. And because it runs in the cloud inside of Microsoft 365, you get all of the security and governance and everything that you would expect from it being inside of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And this is a really big deal with Copilot Cowork because you can be sure that your data is safe and secure and it's not used to train any models and it's all within inside your tenant. So it's going to respect things like any permissions you have set on files and any sensitivity labels that you have set with inside of the files that it can access in your tenant. And when you're going this extra step and actually letting AI execute tasks on behalf of you, this whole governance and security thing is huge. So being able to make sure that it's respecting your permissions and it's not showing you anything or pulling data from files that it shouldn't have access to and that it's respecting things like sensitivity labels is a really big deal. Okay, so we kind of understand where this thing came from and what being inside of the Microsoft 365 platform gives us in terms of the security it offers. But what can this thing actually do for us and how is it different than just using regular old Copilot? So think on a normal conversation you might have today with Copilot. You send in a prompt, ask it a question, you wait a while, it returns a result. So it's a really transactional relationship we have with Copilot. You're the one putting in the prompt. You're having to connect the dots with the output that it gives you and drive the whole process. So Copilot definitely helps, but you're the one steering every single step. But Copilot Cowork is different. So you still start the conversation by describing the outcome. But then Cowork can go and create a plan based off of what you want to have happen, search across all of your Microsoft 365 files that you have access to, and look at the different tools and skills that it has, and come back with a finished product. Now, I've said all these great things about Copilot Cowork and what it can do for you, but let's talk about how you can access this. You'll need a Microsoft 365 environment with a Microsoft 365 Copilot subscription and with the Microsoft Frontier program enabled. So the Frontier program essentially gives you early access to some of these new AI capabilities inside of your Microsoft 365 tenant. And at the time of this video, currently this is only available in US regions. But if you have all of that, you'll be able to get to Copilot Cowork by going to your Microsoft 365 portal and selecting the All Agents tab and searching for Cowork. And you'll see the Cowork agent, which is part of that Frontier program, and you'll add that if you haven't already added it as an available agent in your Microsoft 365 Copilot experience. Now, once we have that, we'll open it up and we'll see how Cowork works. First, let's take a look at the models that this uses. So in the upper right-hand corner of Cowork, you'll see this drop-down that says Auto. So by default, it will automatically select the right model for the job, but you can choose between the Claude Sonnet 4.6 or Opus 4.6 models. And when it comes to interacting with Copilot Cowork, you can either type in what you want it to do, or it does have microphone support, so you can have a voice conversation with it as well. Now from this one page, you'll be able to not only put in new requests for Cowork, but also see any of the previous tasks and requests that you have. A big benefit of Copilot Cowork is the fact that it's integrated in your Microsoft 365 tenant. So if I click on this plus button in the chat window with Cowork, I can add work context. So it automatically has context of different people that I work with if I want to ask questions about them, files that I'm working with, any meetings that I have, in emails, Teams chats, different channels, and SharePoint sites. So if I know we did a retrospective and I have this document here and I want to be able to summarize that and send an email, I can reference that particular file and I can just ask Cowork to create an email to my boss summarizing the retrospective. So at this point, this is all in the cloud and it's delegating the work and making a plan. So I can walk away from my computer, go work on something else, go get some coffee, whatever I need to do, and come back and see what it produces for me. And as it starts working, you'll have this detail screen on the right-hand side where you can see the progress and the inputs that you put in, as well as the outputs it ends up producing, and any skills that it might use. At the time of this video, Copilot Cowork supports 13 different out-of-the-box skills. It has skills that can help you create Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and PDF files. It has skills for creating emails, doing meeting scheduling and calendar management, daily briefings, enterprise search, deep research, communications, and adaptive cards. But you're not limited to those 13 out-of-the-box skills. It also supports custom skills. All right, so let's check back in here on our Cowork status. So I asked it to create an email to my boss summarizing that retrospective doc that we found. And we'll see what it did here. So notice right in the Cowork experience, it's drafted an email. So one of those skills that it has is the ability to send an email. So in line here, I can review what it's put together. So when I said send an email to my boss, it was able to look up and find who my boss is and put that person in the to line. It got the subject for the retrospective summary, and it's drafted that email along with that retrospective doc as an attachment. So before sending off any email, it's going to give you this checkpoint where you can review the output and make sure that it looks good and make any changes. Now, since I'm testing, I'm going to change the to myself just so I can make sure that it will send that email. So I changed that, but we'll keep everything else the same and we'll click send. And now it can go and actually send that email for me. Now let's go back to the home page by clicking on Cowork in the upper left-hand corner, and we'll see where all of the tasks that we delegate to this end up. So at the bottom of the page, you have this task section, and we can filter these by any tasks that we have that currently need input, those that are in progress, those that are done, and then also those that are scheduled. So another thing that we can do with Copilot Cowork is it doesn't have to be just an on-demand thing. We can have it run different prompts and tasks for us on a scheduled basis. So this is an example of a scheduled Cowork task that I have to run a weekly PTO risk check. So if we click on that, we can see what this setup is. So I just put in a prompt asking it to, on a recurring basis, check to see if I have PTO coming up in the next few days. And if so, do all of these tasks for me, like to be able to check to see if I have any ongoing tasks that need to be wrapped up before I leave, any draft emails, any communications that need to be responded to. So every Monday morning, it's going to execute this prompt and this task for me and send me an email with anything that I have upcoming. So I use Copilot Cowork almost every day, and where I think it really shines is in this repeatable process scenario. So an example of this could be tell Cowork that I create a weekly email to my team focused on my top of mind for the week. I send this on Monday mornings, and it should include what's top of mind, as well as some key meetings for the week. Now those meetings tend to be executive, and my top of mind are related to key priorities and projects that the team and I are working on. So I can ask Cowork to create a skill where this will occur every Monday morning. So let's just send that in and see if it can help automate this mundane task of doing these weekly top of mind emails. So that was pretty quick, and it gave me another interactive card that I can review and set this up. Now Cowork is able to infer so much context from this. Now I didn't put in an extremely long prompt. I just did a quick summary of what I wanted to have done, like sending a top of mind email to my team. Because it's in my Microsoft 365 tenant, it's able to know who my team is. So it picked them up as who the recipients of this weekly email will be. And then it wrote some custom instructions so it knows what to do every week. So it says Monday at 8 a.m. It's going to look up the calendar and identify key meetings, review any email threads and activity from the past week to identify those top priorities, then compose and send that top of mind email to my direct reports, and showing that the email should have a professional tone with a brief greeting and then cover 2 sections, the top of mind and then key meetings this week. So it did all of that for me based off of that one little prompt. And now this will set up a recurring scheduled task for me as soon as I click on this activate and run. So it's just going to go through that first run through of this, and it will repeat this process for me automatically every Monday at 8 a.m. And you can always see it's thinking, so it's checking my calendar first. Now it's reviewing my email activity. And then once it's done reviewing that and collecting all of that input, it will go and compose and send that email. So similar to when I asked it earlier to send that retro update to my boss, it's going to give me this preview of the email it plans to send. Now, as part of some of the skills it has, it does have the ability to make the emails look a little bit nicer. So notice the use of emojis and tables in the email. So for this first initial run through, I obviously want to review what it produced so I'm confident with it. But then from this point on, when this is running on that scheduled basis, I don't want to have this step here to review and approve it. I want it to just automatically do that. So that's why you'll notice on this button below, it's giving me an option to always allow to send this email to those select recipients. So when I click this, I'm giving their permission to Copilot Cowork to send this email every Monday morning on my behalf without me having to review it. And now the scheduled task is set up, and that's one less thing off my plate. Now earlier, I briefly touched on the concept of skills in Copilot Cowork. So it has all those out-of-the-box skills that it will use depending on what you're asking it to do, but you can also create your own custom skills. So one of the things that I use Cowork for is to help me with my content creation. So when I create a video, I'd also like to be able to create a blog post from that and be able to brainstorm blog ideas. Now that's something that I could create a custom skill for, so I can have it create a very standard output when I ask it to help create a blog. Now a custom skill is simply a markdown file. So what you can do is create a new markdown file called skill.md, and then you'll just build out your skill. So I'm going to paste in one that I've already written here. Now formatting wise, the important things to know are the very top here. So you need a property called name, and that's going to be the name of your actual skill. And then the description, which is really important because the description is what's going to tell Copilot Cowork when it should call on this particular skill. And so in this particular one, I'm just listing out the goal of what I want it to do to turn some messy notes and drafts into a clean, publish-ready blog, outputs that it should always follow, and then style rules. So I want to make sure this is always in my voice, so I can say be direct, non-gimmicky, things like that. So it's going to follow this whole process that I've outlined in this particular skill. And now we just need to jump over to OneDrive to connect this to Cowork. So go to your personal OneDrive, and you'll go into your Documents folder, and there'll be a Cowork folder there. And in that Cowork folder, you have your skills folder. And for each skill that you want to have, you need a subfolder for that. So let's do a new folder. And I'll call this April Blog Formatter. And then within this folder, that's where we're going to upload our custom skill. Okay, so now that we have that uploaded, Cowork should be able to call this when I ask it to create a blog post. So as we know, regular Copilot can do things like drafting a blog post, but it's that synthesis and combination of things that make Cowork really powerful, and the ability to do things like this, like being able to call that custom skill. So I'm going to ask Cowork to research this new Power Apps capability with generative pages and code apps and vibe.powerapps.com apps, and make a detailed blog post about how it's changing the area of Power Apps development. So with that, it should be able to pick up on the fact that I want a blog post, so it should call that custom skill. Now beyond that, it's going to do the deep research as well. So it's going to go out and look across the web and find out relevant information about these particular products that I ask it to research. And this really shows the end-to-end Cowork behavior. So I describe my task, and then it goes to work creating a plan. That's what we see here in the progress section. And if we look at the skills it's using, so the very first one that it's calling here is the deep research skill, so it can go out and do all of that research on these Power Apps capabilities. So you're probably already seeing that there's a lot of difference between Copilot Cowork and regular Copilot. Another one that I'll point out here is with regular Copilot, you put in a prompt and you have to wait for the response to be able to put anything else in. But say at this point, I realized, crap, I forgot to put in a really critical piece of information for this, or there's another requirement that I have. I don't have to wait for it to go through this whole process because this could take a while. I could just type in my other request here and it will add that to the queue. So maybe as part of this, I want to make sure to include a detailed comparison chart between the ways to build Power Apps in the blog. I can type that in and just say, queue that up, and it will add that back into the plan. And after a couple of minutes, we see that this finished with this nice detailed blog post that I can use in my blog. And if we scroll down, we can see that it did add that additional table that I asked it to put in with that extra prompt. So I hope you found this quick intro to Copilot Cowork helpful. And if you're looking for more ideas of different things that you can do with Cowork and maybe some hands-on labs, check out aka.ms/agent-academy and our new Cowork Collective section that just launched. And in this, we have 3 different missions right now, taking you through everything like doing a badge check to the compliance package, which is an audit prep type scenario, and that out of office vacation handoff, where you can do everything you need to do to prep for taking vacation time and delegate tasks to Cowork. And in each one of these missions, you'll have any relevant sample files that you need to be able to test this out, as well as all of the steps. And for each one that you finish, you can even get a badge from the global AI community by filling out a form, and you can share that on your socials. And we've got a bunch of ideas for more to add here, so check this page for more missions to be added. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.